Hi, this is Nathan Anderson with Yogic-Visions, and we're here today in sunny Los Angeles, California, and we're visiting with Dr. James Hopkins. He was a doctor of chiropractic for many years until a series of life-changing events caused him to discover a new path for himself. So we're going to hear about this today. Dr. James, thank you so much for meeting with us. We really appreciate you having us into your studio here.
Great to meet you as well.
So tell us a bit about this practice of yours.
About 11 years ago, I was inspired to create a series of musical instruments based on Pythagorean philosophy and math to help facilitate people what Pythagoras would call align them to their true divine nature.
Wonderful. So you say instruments, so these are, of course, we're seeing some beautiful samples of them around us here. So you had these instruments built?
Yes, they're all custom made, and there's some gongs in the back here, but the rest of them are all stringed instruments. They're acoustic. They're played with live, and each has a little different sort of engineering and purpose to them. So.
And they're all tuned to specific frequencies?
Yeah, very specific harmonic ratios that Pythagoras talked about in 569 BC.
Great. I know Pythagoras was a big hero of mine as well, so I need to get a chance to learn a little bit more about him.
Yes.
Today.
You know, 11 years ago I came across his work, life, and teachings, and I must have read 60 books, and the more I read, the more I was inspired, and that's really that inspiration is what led me to what I'm doing now.
So what caused you to get into the healing field, the healing arts in the first place?
When I was 14 years old, I crashed on a motorcycle. I hit my head without a helmet. I was paralyzed on the left side. It was very traumatic. I went to all the best doctors and was told that nothing could be done to learn to live with this situation. And then my grandmother came from Europe and dragged me to this old chiropractor. He was 86 when I was 14. Back then, chiropractors weren't cool or alternative. They were quacks. Nobody went to them. This is like 40 years ago. And long story short, he fixed me in a week. So this was my first lesson in question authority, because the best said nothing could be done, learn to live with it, and the quack, quote, fixed me in a week. So it also taught me that through every traumatic event is a gift. And because I found my purpose, I said, I don't know what you did or how, but that's what I want to do. And there was no evidence at that time to suggest that in my lifetime, chiropractic would become the second largest healthcare profession in the United States. So I ended up having a really wonderful and rewarding career. Yeah.
Nice. So then, in the midst of this career, you came upon another life-changing event, and that propelled you into this other side.
Yes, I had 25 amazing years, the dream practice, wonderful clientele and celebrities and film, theater, music, and I just share that because nobody ever loved their life as much as me. I woke up every morning so happy to be alive, doing what I love with wonderful people, and about 11 years ago, that was all taken away, starting with severe arthritis in my hands. They literally curled into a claw. I couldn't open my hands. That was just the beginning. I lost my hands, my health, my purpose in life, my career, and all the clients, the income associated with this, the house I lived in 18 years, 4 dogs died. My mentor took his last breath in my arms from leukemia, and then a piece of fiberglass got in the engine of my car. I was breathing it for 6 months, and I went into complete respiratory failure, almost died. Everything I used to formally identify myself with was removed, and I kind of was aware that this was a spiritual event going on. It didn't make it any less painful, but it forced me to go really deep into my yoga and meditations and to sincerely ask what's happening here. What is it that I need to get? I was wondering if I was actually going to transition, from this life, and I was just trying to tune into what was going on. And basically from that process came this work.
A real hero's journey then.
Yes.
It's amazing. Well, it's wonderful that you were able to take from that, like you said, and transition into something new and beautiful. So now that you've done that, you've had these beautiful instruments made, and now you're practicing with them. So tell us a bit about how you practice now and what you do with that practice.
Yes. everything was removed. I came across the life of Pythagoras. I was inspired because he was the father of music in the Western world. He calculated the musical intervals and believed you could apply music as medicine and apply certain frequencies and harmonics as healing. So that inspired me for a few years, just reading about this. And then I decided to build instruments, and it took a few years to find master luthiers, stringed instrument makers. They didn't exist in the United States. There's brilliant luthiers in the US, but they didn't quite understand what I was trying to do. And anyway, 2 years of thinking about it, 2 years to find instrument makers in Europe, and then 2 years to actually make them. Finally, they were physically manifest in my space through customs, and it wasn't until then I realized I have no idea what to do with these. I don't know how to tune them. I've never played an instrument in my life. So I literally slept on the living room floor for about a year and a half, just allowing the instruments to teach me how to tune and how to approach them as an instrument, and how to take an ancient philosophical idea into a direct practical experience for humans. And so about 7 or 8 years later, I was ready to apply this with humans. And it's literally the day I decided I was ready, I had my first client, and every aspect of it has far exceeded my highest expectations. And I could see Pythagoras was gave me an initiation a few years ago, and downloaded these tools. But it's very difficult to describe exactly what happens because it's a nonverbal experience, and therefore words can't possibly express what happens. But anytime anyone actually experiences it, there are no questions in their mind as to what I'm doing here and where the value is and why I went to such great lengths to create this system. But Pythagoras would say that music at its highest purpose should be not for entertainment, that's healing too, but at its highest purpose to align the individual to their true divine nature. So Pythagoras was the first person to coin the term cosmos, which means not only everything there is, outward and both inward, but the perfect order that exists within everything that is. So, in other words, simultaneous to the chaos that is around us and within us, there is a divine order. The fact that you can predict exactly where the planets will be in 10,000 years at noon. The phenomena of a vibrating string has a perfect order to it. If you divide it in half, you get the octave, and each half is vibrating exactly twice as much as the whole was. And then he was the first to mathematically express the overtone series and the musical intervals, and he noticed that the combination of tones had very specific emotional content to them that was not subjective but universal. And so he would say, simultaneous to all the chaos around us and within us, there is this order. If we are not our bodies, which age and die, if we're not our minds, which chatter incessantly, then who are we? What are we really? And he would say we are of this divine order that is eternal. And he used the phenomena of sound and vibration and harmonics, very specific types of harmonics, to align you to that true divine order, to help drop the mind-body paradigm and tune into that.
The divine nature.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
he's remarkable. I mean, we could probably spend the whole interview just talking about Pythagoras because I have so much interest in him.
Yeah.
I know he was a great philosopher, mathematician, but I also understand that his scale was tuned different than what we hear today. Is that correct?
Yes, he worked with different types of scales and harmonics, and we could spend forever talking about it. I think it's worth mentioning a few things that most people don't know. We all know about the Pythagorean theorem.
Yeah.
But he is considered the father of math and geometry in the Western world, the father of music, the founder of philosophy, the first person to use that term. But most importantly, he was the first and last, meaning the only Westerner in human history ever to be allowed and initiated into the Egyptian institutions. And it's well documented. He spent 23 years there, and then he spent another 12 years in Persia, but he brought all this wisdom to the West, and he literally is the founding forefather of Western civilization. So I find it really interesting that that was left out in school, because the fact is our Western culture is deeply influenced by an Egyptian initiate. And so he brought very similar teachings to the West, and no doubt he brought the theorem from Egypt and these phenomenal principles of sound from Egypt. And so I believe that I'm just sort of bringing a tradition back, you know. The same way when I was 14 and decided to be a chiropractor, everybody was like, oh no, what's that? I really believe in 5 or 10 years from now, sound will just be everywhere. You know, hospitals are already using music therapy. Oncologists have found the power of sound to help people who are suffering with terminal conditions.
Nice.
So it has tremendous value.
So tell us about your practice. You actually practice on clients. You meet people. How does a session normally go?
It's normal. It's word of mouth. So that's how people find me. It's strictly word of mouth. It's divided into a series and parts. First part is old school, hands-on, because I loved what I did. I do a little body work. You know, we have bodies. That's the densest aspect of our being. So I do a little massage, shiatsu, acupressure, you know, and the objective is to get you to just really relax, because I find the more relaxed you are, the more available you are for the more subtle things that happen in the sound part of it. So that's the physical. The second phase is these gongs. These are absolutely incredible gongs inspired by Pythagoras' concept of harmony of the spheres. And the third phase is the stringed instruments, and of which you're actually lying on one. If you could imagine a massive 7-foot-long cello with hundreds of strings designed to support a human being lying on the top of it while I play, so the client not only has the audible experience, but they feel these harmonics swirling all through their bodies because they're directly connected to the resonant soundboard. So it's that kind of a thing, physical, astral, spiritual, tearing up into the sublime. It's about a 2-hour process, and it's very profound, and you know, it definitely sort of people who do yoga, people who meditate, people who understand the value of a sort of universal principles. They get to basically have the direct experience of truly aligning with universal intelligence and the divine, that beautiful, perfect order that exists, no matter what's happening here. Even if you are dying of a terminal condition and have been given 6 months to get your affairs in order, whatever people are suffering with, half the people that come to me have serious challenges they're suffering with, and the other half are people like yogis and rinpoches and people who are doing fabulous, and their whole life is an expression of optimal levels of well-being, and they want to do what it takes to maintain that or up the ante. So I like the contrast of the kinds of clients that find their way here.
Wonderful. So you can bring people back to stasis or take them up from there.
That's right. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So tell us, of course, we want to reference your website. What is the site that we can send people to?
It's www.harmonix with an X, HARMONIX, healing, HEALING, all one word, .com.
Okay, well, we'll have it on the link, of course, so people can see that. But we certainly want to let people become more aware. You've got photos, of course, that they can see, and so they can study a little bit more about this. It's a fascinating subject. Is there any other thoughts you might have that would be pertinent to the viewer?
If you check out the website, of course, you can see the instruments. They're very inspiring to look at. And I always suggest going to the quotations. I spent about 7 years collecting quotes from the greatest minds that have lived for the last 2,000 or 3,000 years, all cultures and walks of life who've said something with regards to what happens here. From Leonardo da Vinci to Einstein, from Shakespeare, to the great scientists and poets, and you realize this is not anything new age, this is ancient tradition. And I find it interesting that the medical association has usurped the word tradition. They consider themselves traditional medicine, and everybody else is relegated to alternative, when the fact is, if you look up the word tradition, it says something that has been around for a long time. Medicine's been around a couple hundred years, but acupuncture, herbology, yoga, sound healing, all these things, herbology, have been around for millennium. They are the traditions. And so it's clever, but people are waking up to the fact that when we align ourselves to the true divine natural order of existence, we can experience perfect health and dynamic well-being, and that's what I'm trying to do here.
That's great. Well, I hope that's the message everybody gets. That's really wonderful. Well, I really appreciate you sharing your time with us today, and I want to wish you the best of luck, of course, and thank you so much.
Thank you.